Welcome back to the Top Notch Documentaries YouTube channel. In today's Israel Keys video, I'll be covering Israel Keys' time behind bars, specifically focusing on his incarceration time from May 23rd and onwards, concluding in December of 2012. Hope you enjoy. Israel tried to make a break out of open court in the Federal District Court building in Alaska on Wednesday, May 23rd of 2012. The court hearing was to do with setting a new trial date for Keys, and he was not happy with his court-appointed attorneys. He glanced around the room and was surveying the scene. Unexpectedly, Keys' shackles hit the floor and he leapt over the courtroom railing. He was quickly grabbed by law enforcement and repeatedly tased on the ground. People yelled, "Kill him," and "Get him," as everyone was escorted from the scene. As a result of this attempted breakout, Keys was considered a major risk to the prison population and the public. It was mandatory for him to wear full restraints whenever he exited his jail cell, and 2 guards had to accompany him whenever he moved about. At the jail, he wasn't allowed to have a neighbour because he would act on any opportunity to escape, including potentially seeking help from another inmate wherever possible. This sounds like a good procedure for a dangerous inmate like Israel Keys, but plenty of red flags were missed along the way, likely deliberately, and these misses would ensure the fate of Keys later on the same year. Keys entered the courthouse 2 days later to repeat procedures and was warned that he could be given a gag and more shackles if he didn't comply. If he attempted another escape, he'd be forced to watch the court situation play out from the jail. Keys and his attorneys were hardly compatible, and Keys repeatedly expressed his frustrations about having been appointed them. Keys' public defender would object to the prosecutor's acceptance of a speedy trial date being set. This would be going against Keys' wish. He wanted a short timeline of events and everything to be resolved quickly. Despite essentially working on behalf of Keys, he was doing the exact opposite of what Keys wanted him to do. Still, the judge asked Keys about a time frame for a new trial date, and Keys responded, "If 10 months is realistic, that's fine with me." He then added, "If it's realistic to set it sooner than 10 months, that's also fine with me." Over the next few days, Keys took part in 2 interviews with the FBI. Discussions mainly revolved around his escape attempt and his concern around the timeline that he desperately longed for. Keys was still frustrated with his court-appointed representation and was even more frustrated when he was told that everything was moving slow because of a document they had signed on March 30th. This document, signed by Keys at the bidding of his public defender, made attaining his goal of the death penalty even more challenging. In summary, it mentioned the Department of Justice would not seek the death penalty against him for cooperating with the Samantha Koenig case, and he'd already done just that. Keys was angry and argued that he had talked about details of the Koenig case because the prosecutor, Kevin Feldis, whom Keys didn't like or trust, had said that the document wouldn't be relevant when it came to the government recommending the death penalty at his trial. Keys felt like he'd been lied to, and the relationship with the FBI was slipping away month by month. Keys made the comment, "I want this letter declared null and void, and honestly, if I'd known it was going to turn into this big of an issue, I would not have put my signature on it." Keys asked for the death penalty for the Samantha Koenig case, despite numerous objections from his public defenders. Feldis said he'd go for it, and with that, everything was wrapped up. Keys would take part in some June FBI interviews, one with Vermont on the phone. He was asked many questions about the courier scene, and was open for the most part. However, there appeared to be tension between Vermont police and the FBI going on behind the scenes. Keys was going to be prosecuted federally, and everyone seemed to be fighting over who should be involved with the case, and careers were definitely on the line. Vermont felt like they were being kept out of the case, and in my opinion, the case was being used by some for self-gain, rather than trying to crack other unsolved cases. Keys would reside in his jail cell for the majority of the day. He'd communicate with his ex-partner, the mother of his child, and his daughter during his time locked up, through letters and phone calls. His cell consisted of 2 bunks, a toilet and a sink. He was not well liked in the jail by the guards especially, given his charges and I'd imagine his special treatment by the FBI. He mentioned to his sister that the guards hated him. They left him outside in the jail recreation area for hours in the freezing conditions, and would apparently degrade him whenever possible. They clearly wanted him gone, and this was on full display given the fact that they didn't care if he had razors. It was on July 20th that a Vermont press conference about details surrounding the disappearance of Bill and Lorraine Currier would share new information with the public. The couple had actually been kidnapped and murdered, and this was not public knowledge at the time. No suspect name was brought up at the request of Keyes. Unfortunately, the media had other plans. An anonymous source would leak the name of a suspected Alaskan serial killer named Israel Keyes soon after. The FBI and other law enforcement in Vermont didn't confirm the allegations, but the agents working with Keyes in Alaska knew that it'd create serious tension and problems for the ongoing relationship with Keyes. Getting new information would be a nightmare. Keyes would soon learn that his name had been attached to the Currier murders, and he was now reluctant to communicate and cooperate further. But on July 26th, Keyes would meet the agents to discuss the media's situation and progression of the timeline. Keyes was told that he could be charged with the Currier murders in Vermont. He was enraged. Getting what he wanted was looking less likely all the time. I still haven't been able to get a straight answer on any of it. I don't even understand how they can charge me in Vermont because Feldis told me this was a federal crime. That's the whole idea of me giving you the guns and the silencers and that crap, because I thought it was all going to be federal, and now you're saying they want to charge me locally. Keyes then went on to state, I can't see there's anything for me to gain at this point. It seems like whatever's going to happen is going to happen regardless. I don't know. I'm starting to think I'm more efficient than the government. Keyes was very concerned about details coming out to the public about the Samantha Koenig case, likely because of the horrendous kidnapping and murder of a young woman, alongside the acts committed on her corpse. He wasn't concerned as much about details from the Currier case in comparison. Keyes implied his future suicide by stating, look, the bottom line is this. We already all know how this ends, so all I care about is what happens between now and whenever it ends. If things don't go the way I want, I don't need you guys. Keyes stopped talking with the FBI for months following this news, and he'd grown tired of the whole situation. He wanted confirmation that he'd get what he wanted, and he admitted that his initial strategy of toying with investigators and holding victim identities above them hadn't paid off. Still, giving them information hadn't worked for him either. No deal between him and the FBI could truly be worked out in his mind. In September, Keyes was found to have a makeshift handcuff key. He was given 60 days in punitive segregation, which is basically how he was living already. This segregation was different in that his cell would be looked into every 45 minutes. Keyes was interviewed in October, and you can listen to those in full on my channel. The October interviews were revealing in terms of the information shared. However, there was still so much that Keyes hadn't shared and time was running out. November 29th would be the last interview recorded with Israel Keyes. He would talk about Washington and his involvement in 4 murders there, how he'd accidentally killed a victim with a shovel, and a possible scenario whereby he could guide investigators toward a hidden cache between Neah Bay and Seattle. I will now mention some interesting events that occurred during Keyes' incarceration. There is no exact date that these events took place, so it's challenging to place where they fell on Keyes' incarceration timeline. This first event likely took place before October or sometime during October because it was actually mentioned during one of the October interviews. Sometime following his courtroom escape attempt, Keyes had his jail cell searched. A letter written to his brother was confiscated. Inside it held details about 6 victims, 3 of them being Samantha Koenig and the Curriers. Keyes had written that he can't convict a dead man. A makeshift noose was also located in his cell, which implied his future suicide. And finally, Keyes had been taken off suicide watch for some reason. He was serving 60 days for the makeshift handcuff key, and he still managed to get hold of a razor and end his life. The jail definitely could have done more to have prevented the death of Keyes. However, given his cunning and deceptive behaviour, it's likely that Keyes would have found a way to escape the looming possibility of a life sentence. This has been Keyes' time of incarceration. As always, thank you for watching.